Oh,
hello. Thank you for coming back.
Yes.
Do I put on pants for this?
Yes. My name is Jen Childs. I'm the producing artistic director of 1812 Productions.
I'm Scott Greer, and you're welcome.
Yes. And as always, at this time, we would normally be gathering in the theater, but because we can't, we thought we'd invite you here to our dining room table so that we can talk comedy and have cocktails.
What are you drinking?
I am drinking an old-fashioned.
Yummy.
I'm an old-fashioned girl.
This is my newest quarantine cocktail. It's called Fauci's Revenge, and it's just full of data.
Fair.
Yes, it's actually a gin and tonic with an orange in it.
It's always a gin and tonic.
It's always a gin and tonic.
But cheers. Also, we were listening to a little Mae West as we came in. Scott, as always, is wearing his 1812 t-shirt. I am wearing another vintage 1812 t-shirt. It's my party t-shirt because It's My Party was a show that we did several years ago about women in comedy. And tonight we are actually looking at broads and some of the naughty, groundbreaking women of comedy.
Speaking of which, should we maybe make the caveat that this broadcast this week is perhaps not for tiny ears? There's some
innuendo.
Yeah.
There's some innuendo.
Yeah.
And
unless you are up for having some uncomfortable conversations with your little children, maybe they should go elsewhere.
There we go. That's all. Before we get to this, first of all, we have two amazing guest stars today. MB Scallen is here and Brett Robinson is here, and they're going to join us. But first, we have to do a little bit of. I have to do a couple of announcements. So first of all, if you have not visited our Facebook page or our website, we are doing something called the Stuck at Home Comedy Challenge, where people redo and take my glasses off, where people remake pictures of their favorite comedies and send them in. So, for example,
here are some highlights.
Yes.
So, everybody can. How is that? That's pretty good, right? Okay, so from Birdcage, that's from Birdcage, and there's Alex Pechnel and Dan O'Neill, kind of amazing. Then we have in one panel. That's Glenn Perlman and Allison Roberts from On Young Frankenstein, and Jim Carpenter and his son Michael from Napoleon Dynamite. These are just some of the amazing photos going on.
Many, many photos that are going on.
Yeah.
So the other announcement that we have is this Saturday night at 7:30 and 9:30, Scott and myself and Tom Shotkin, our fearless stage manager, are taking on Comedy Sports in an improv battle. So that is happening. You can get tickets at comedysportsphilly.com, but that's at 7:30 and at 9:30. The winning team, we're splitting all the proceeds, but the winning team will get $1 more. So please help put $1 in 1812's coffers.
Yeah.
Comedy Conversations coming up on Monday, May 11th at 8 o'clock. We are having a comedy conversation online with our Eric Thomas, who is the author of the new book of essays, Here For It, How to Save Your Soul in America. He's also a Barrymore Award-winning playwright, and he writes Eric Reads the News for Elle.com. It should be an absolutely wonderful conversation. He's going to tell some stories from his book and talk about the process of turning a story into an essay or a play. We've been extended. Today is the last day of April, and when we decided to do this, we thought, well, we'll just do this for April, but because who knows where we'll be in May?
Yeah.
But where will we be in May? We'll be here. We'll be here at our dining room table, and so we've been extended for another month.
Yes, here's to it.
Here's to it.
Congrats.
So if you are just joining us, we are talking about Broads, a cabaret that we did last season about the naughty, boundary-pushing women of comedy. And the first one that we're going to talk about tonight is Mae West. And even if you don't know Mae West, you've probably seen an impression of her or heard, oh, come up and see me sometime. I used to be Snow White, but I drifted. And many people know her from her films. one of her most famous is My Little Chickadee with W.C. Fields. And this is just a teeny piece of that, which kind of expresses who she is and who he is. So,
Whom do I have the honor of addressing, milady?
they call me Flower Belle.
Flower Belle. What a euphonious appellation. Easy on the ears and a benefit to the eyes.
No, you're kind of cute yourself.
Thank you. I never doubt a lady.
Smart boy.
Ah, what symmetrical digits. May I?
Help yourself.
Would you object if I avail myself of a second helping?
Oh, you're compromising me. Oh. So even though a lot of people think of W.C. Fields and Mae West in the same breath, that was actually the only film that they did together, and that was pretty much like the only scene.
Yeah.
they had scenes with everybody else, and they didn't like each other very much.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No, they did not get along. They didn't care for each other.
No.
Not a fan.
They had sort of great chemistry. Maybe
They
that's
did.
what, yeah.
Sexual tension, just like us. But Mae West was so much more than that. The first film that she did when she was 40, and prior to that, she had this huge career as a vaudeville and stage performer. She was 5 feet tall, which I love. Her mother, and this kind of sums her up. Her mother was a corset model. Her father was a prize fighter, and she loved and studied female impersonators when she was growing up. So
Proto drag queens.
Yes, exactly. That's old school for drag queens, and that kind of expresses exactly who she was. This curvaceous, like ballsy, campy sense of humor. And one of the things that I love about her is that she, like many of the ladies that we're going to talk about tonight, people didn't get her thing, what she was. They didn't know what to do with her. So she was like, you know what? I know what to do with me. And she wrote her own material. Including in her campy sense of humor, this is one of my favorite Mae West lines. How tall are you? 6 foot 7 inches. Let's forget about the 6 feet and talk about the 7 inches. It's better without the glasses, but I can't see the words, It's hard. It's very hard.
Yeah. She had excellent vision.
She did.
So.
She did. And from an early time, she had a lot of battles with the censors. She wrote a play called Sex.
1926?
Yes, 1926. And you can read what the papers had to say about it.
Here are some reviews. A crude and inept play, cheaply produced and poorly acted, the New York Times. Nasty, infantile, amateurish, with vicious dialogue, from Variety. An offensive monstrosity, plucked from the garbage can to the sewer, a vulgar affair, and the stench was not the fault of the street cleaning department. Walter Winchell.
And the play, of course, played to sold out houses for over a year. The theater was raided by the police, and Mae West was arrested for indecency, and it was great publicity, and that did even more for her. So she was in this constant battle with the censors, but she was always sort of like, look, this is who I am. And even as she got older, one of the things they talked about with My Little Chickadee is she still wanted to maintain this kind of sexy presence. And they were like, you're 40, you can't do that. And she was like, screw you. And she continued to do that. Like, I think when she was in her 70s, she made a movie called Sextet, where she was still that kind of curvaceous, boa twirling person. And so we have a little piece of something that, some of my favorite lines of hers that couldn't get past the censors. Men are like linoleum floors. Lay them right and you can walk all over them for years. Good sex is like good bridge. If you don't have a good partner, you better have a good hand. But she actually made an appearance on the radio on the Edgar Bergen radio hour. And Edgar Bergen was a ventriloquist, and Charlie McCarthy was his ventriloquist dummy that he was most famous for. And in one of the sketches on the air, Mae West said to Charlie McCarthy, "Oh, come over to my house. You can play in my wood pile." I think it's hilarious.
Very demeaning to a wooden dummy.
It was very demeaning. But this is a scene from, an Adam and Eve sketch that she did on the Edgar Bergen Comedy Hour with Don Amici.
The great Don Amici, of course, from Trading Places and Cocoon,
Yes.
among his later films. All right. Welcome to the Edgar Bergen Radio Hour. Our guest today is Mae West. For us, she turns back time to step into the Garden of Eden and into the character of the most fascinating woman of all, Eve. Under a spreading fig tree lays one Mr. Adam, sprawled out lazily in the hot sun. Eve obviously is bored beyond endurance as they play a game of cards with a deck of fig leaves.
Listen, tall, tan, and tired. It's time I told you a thing or two. Ever since creation, I've done nothing but play double solitaire. It's disgusting. It's getting me down.
Well, we got a nice place here.
That's the trouble. It's too nice.
Well, I'm not complaining.
But I want something to happen, a little excitement, a little adventure. The girl's got to have a little fun once in a while. There's no future under a fig tree, even if it is spreading.
Oh, come on, woman, be like me. Why don't you relax and take it easy?
Because I'm a lady of big ideas.
What kind of ideas?
You've no idea. Listen, Adam, I've got to get a chance to expand my personality.
Well, go on, expand.
I will, out there.
Out there? You mean outside the gates of the Garden of Eden?
Now you're talking.
Oh, but who knows what's out there?
I'd find out.
Oh, no. We can't go. We've still got a lease on this place.
You mean to tell me a lease is the thing that's holding me back from developing my personality?
Well, a lease is a lease. Anyway, we got a nice place here. The temperature's perfect. The sun is always shining. Nothing but a heavy dew once in a while.
What are you, the Chamber of Commerce?
Go away. Let me sleep, will you?
Adam, you don't know a thing about women.
You apparently forget you were originally one of my own ribs.
Listen, long, lazy, and lukewarm. You think I want to stay in this place all my life?
Well, why do you want trouble?
If trouble means something that makes you catch your breath, if trouble means something that makes your blood run through your veins like seltzer water, then Adam, my man, give me trouble. And because of that sketch, she was banned from the radio for over 12 years. And I think one of the things that I love and why we talk about Mae West first in this instance is that she was unapologetic. You know, she wasn't the first person who wrote about sex. She wrote all of these plays like The Hussy and The Constant Sinner, you know, but the difference is that in Mae West's world, those women didn't apologize. You know, at the end of so many of these other like fallen women stories, there was a man who swooped in and saved her at the end, or she had a kind of come to Jesus moment where she atoned and was sorry for everything. And that didn't happen at the end of Mae West's books or plays or movies. Her sinners were unapologetic and were like, no, that's who I am, you know? And I think that to me is the one thing that categorizes or distinguishes all the women we're going to talk about tonight is unapologetically themselves. Absolutely themselves. And as Mae would say, I never said it would be easy. I just said it would be worth it. We're going to move and we're going to go fast because I want to get to our guests, really. But I do want to spend some time talking about Sophie Tucker, who was another vaudeville actress, performer. And Sophie Tucker was unapologetic in a kind of different way than Mae West. You know, she was called the last of the Red Hot Mamas. She was a big woman, zaftig, as they say. And again, so many of the stories are the same. Like producers were like, "What do I do with you? You're too big to be a leading lady. What do I do with you?" And she again was sort of like, "I know what to do with me." And she used all of the things that other people said were detriments to her size, her weight, the fact that she was divorced multiple times. She used all of those and she turned them into like, these are the positive things about me. Bette Midler is kind of the sort of descendant of her. And there's all these great Sophie Tucker jokes that Bette Midler did. And it's a little bit apocryphal as to like, were they really Sophie Tucker jokes, or were they just jokes that
Bruce Valanche wrote for her?
For her to do. But my favorite one of them is this. I will never forget it, you know. It was on the occasion of my 80th birthday. My boyfriend Ernie bought for me a tombstone. And on that tombstone he inscribed, "Here lies Soph, cold as usual." Not being one to take that kind of thing lying down, I went out and bought Ernie a tombstone. And on that tombstone I had inscribed, "Here lies Ernie, stiff at last." Amazing. And that's just the cleanest of them. So there's more. But
we forgot our daughter was going to be here this whole broadcast.
Yeah, I know. We have a long conversation.
More
happening.
uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah, it's going to be great. But Sophie Tucker had a number of songs that she made famous, including things like, you know, "I'm Living Alone" and "I Like It." and they were all about being a modern, independent woman who didn't need a man, and who also celebrated the parts of her that other people thought were detriments. And so Scott's going to go over there and play the ukulele while I sing one of these songs, which is appropriate because you've heard of the Freshman 15. Well, we're putting on the COVID-19. So this will be a song that I will sing with truth behind it. So here we go. Almost every day, I hear some kind friend say, "Sophie dear, I think you're much too stout." Right off, they suggest the diet they think best. It makes me sick. I wish they'd cut it out. I don't want to get thin. I don't want to get thin. Why should I when I'm all right as I am? I've got a lot of what I've got, and my men love it. They're no vegetarians. They like meat and plenty of it. I don't want to reduce. Furthermore, what's the use? The men follow me around like Mary's lamb. The girls who talk of dieting get on my nerves. If you want to keep your husband straight, show him a lot of curves. That's why I won't get thin. You can laugh, you can grin, but I'm doing very well the way I am.
Well, say, so don't you think you could share a pound or two?
Keep your mind on your music, young man.
Well, I can't when you're around.
Well, then look where I am not.
I can't see that far.
I'll get you a set of Pierre glasses. Anyway, I'm fat. I know I'm fat, and I intend to stay fat.
Now, Miss Tucker, you shouldn't say fat. In the best places, they say one is stout.
And the best places, I'm fat. Bring me in. I don't want to lose weight. The boys tell me I'm great. My sweetheart loves me just the way I am. I have no fear that he'll go chasing other mamas. He may find one who will fill my shoes, not my pajamas. I don't care what I weigh. I eat pie every day. I hate pineapples. I don't care for lemon. I tell you very frankly, I'm the size of Mount Fuji, and many expeditioners have climbed on top of me. So why should I get thin? Bring that pastry tray in, 'cause I'm doing very well the way I am. Yay!
Yay.
So, again, like we say every week, each one of the people that we talk about could be the subject of an hour-long, 2-hour-long, 3-hour-long episode. So both of these women could, but in order to get to our special guests, we are going to go and invite and move on to our next broad. And to help us do that, please, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Miss Brett Ashley Robinson.
Yay! Hi.
How are you, Brett?
I'm good. How are you all doing?
Good,
Very
good. Now, and what are you drinking this evening?
I'm drinking a gin and soda with a little bit of lime juice.
Fabulous. You're drinking that out of some kind of like Japanese tea ceremony cup.
Oh, I have to be really honest. I'm like a mug obsessive. So I'm like a big collector of the glassware. And also just like all ceramics. So I won this at a silent auction, and it comes with like a little mixer. So it like comes with like a bigger one that you can like mix your cocktails in.
Sweet.
Amazing.
It's so cool.
I meant to say this before we brought you on, but for those of you who saw this past year's This Is the Week That Is, you saw Brett in it playing Steve Harvey and Tina Turner and any number of other people. And if you've been to the Wilma or you've been to the Arden, you have certainly seen her work all around. So we are so glad to have you here. And
Tina Turner has made me very famous at all Acme grocery stores.
That's fantastic.
That's like the thing that people are like, you were Tina Turner.
Oh man,
it's amazing.
That's so good.
That's good. That's good. No, I always think about that with Patsy. I'm always kind of like, when people come up, I'm like, some people are known for their fabulous portrayals of Blanche Dubois. Girl.
So glamorous.
But So Brett is here to actually help us talk about Moms Mabley, another amazingly unapologetic broad who was different than Mae West or Sophie Tucker, in that she didn't go in for boas and fancy clothes. Her persona was a lot different. And I know when we talked about this, you said that you bought an album of hers, one of the first albums that you got when you got a record player. I don't know if you want to talk about why or whatever.
Yeah, I had heard about her. Oh no! Hey, I'm having almost a technical difficulty. Will you grab my charger for me, please, for my laptop? Anyway,
You technically forgot to plug your computer in.
I really did. I was like, oh, that's weird. Yeah, I did. I got an album. I got a record player. My dad is like loves music and has been kind of trying to help me develop my terrible taste in music my whole life. He's like very kind in bringing me to the other side. And when he gave me the record player, I listened to I was like scouring thrift shops to like find something really legit. And I had heard of Moms Mabley because someone had told me that she was really funny. And someone had said that she was really funny. And someone had recommended a documentary to me about her. Thank you. And it's so great. One of the things that I love about her, or one of the things that I relate so much to, is this idea of character, and like not only character that you assume, but like character that you have like a deep, intimate, loving relationship with. That the character is not like just a persona for her. It's actually like speaking about and speaking to like people that she knows and parts of herself that like she really loves, because she wasn't like a glamorous woman. And so like this idea of like being like finding the joy and finding the comedy and actually the truth and making that huger is something that I like really relate to as somebody who likes making funny stuff.
Yeah, no, she for those who don't know, Mom's she would keep her teeth out, and she would wear a house dress and shoes that were too big for herself. And her mom's name came from the fact that she was a very maternal figure to a lot of the other performers that she performed with coming up. And it's interesting, African Americans during the time, there was like legit vaudeville that you could cross over to if you made a name for yourself in what they called the TOBA circuit, which was the Theater Owners Booking Association, which they also called the Tough on Black Asses Association. And so she did a lot of that, and she was a caretaker in the early 20s and 30s of a lot of her fellow comics and entertainers. And I love the fact that she was the first woman to play the Apollo Theater.
I know, that's so rad.
Yes.
She's such a like kind of incredible like force of nature.
Yes. And so I'm going to turn it over to Brett to do a little Moms Mabley. So
yeah,
let's get it away before we go, so we can see the full. There we go.
Okay. Hello, my little darlings. Hello, babies. I tell you, I felt so good today. I stayed in the shower about 2 hours. If I feel that good again tomorrow, I'm going to turn the water on. Now, you know that Moms has been accused of liking young men, and I'm guilty. But I can't help it. I do not like old men. Old men can't do anything for me. The only thing an old man can do for me is bring me a message from a young man. I was married to one old man and he died, thank goodness. But Mom's got broke in the wintertime coming on, so I married another old man, older than the other one. Older than his birthday. I mean, an old man. Santa Claus looked like his son. He was younger than his mother. On our first date, I told him, I'm getting ready to go to the country. Do you know anything about the country? He says, yes, I used to live in the country when I was a boy. I said, when you was a boy, everybody lived in the country. After one of my shows, he had the nerve to come backstage and ask if he could see me home. I said, damn, you can't see, period. And he's so weak. I'll never forget when we got married. Leaving the church, somebody throwed a handful of rice at him and knocked him out. And you know, when he said, I do, I found out that he don't, because he can't. And ugly. He was so ugly. Honest to goodness, he hurt my feelings. He was so ugly, he had to sneak up on a glass to get a drink of water. That's the truth. I used to take him to work so I didn't have to kiss him goodbye. I told him the other night, I said, let's sit down and have a talk. Somebody's got to die because I can't put up with this. He said, all right, I'll sit down and talk, G. He said, where will you find another man like me? I said, the graveyard. He said, what would you do if I died? I said, laugh. His sister died. We went to the funeral. After the funeral, the preacher walked over to him and tapped him on the shoulder. He said, how old are you, Pops? He said, 91. Preacher said, ain't no need in you going home.
So
man.
good.
Great
Amazing.
job.
So funny.
It is. And I think that it's like one of the things that I love about her too is because of her persona, in this kind of unassuming way, she could get away with talking about sex and race relations and all sorts of things that were just incredible.
Yeah, she's so great. She's just so fun. I don't know. She's just so funny to me. I just like those jokes are just like so old. like that she can't abide. Like she can't stand how old, which is just like such a, I don't know, just such great material. Especially wearing a house coat, like not being a super sexed up woman, wearing a house coat, not having her teeth in, and still being like, I can't deal with old men. Like
Yes.
I'm a looking young man.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Which is one of the things that I love. And there were so many amazing comics who came after all of these women who dealt in self-deprecation, like Phyllis Diller and Joan Rivers, etc. I almost said Joan Crawford, whatever.
Joan Crawford, hilarious.
Hilarious.
Very famous.
But none of these women who were broads, again, unapologetic. It's like, this is who I am. And I'm not going to make fun of myself. I'm going to make fun of you.
Yeah.
So good. So good. We're going to see more of Brett later on. And I want to invite our next guest on stage too. One of the ways that Moms Mabley kind of got famous and sort of crossed over was by what they call the vinyl revolution in the 1960s. And that was everybody and their mother had a comedy album. And that is how the counterculture, how young people sort of were introduced to a number of comedians, that they would not have had access to otherwise. One of the people that they were introduced to through this vinyl revolution, at least in Canada, was a comedian named Saucy Silvia. And to help us talk about her, let's please welcome to the screen MB Scallen.
Our next guest.
Our next guest. Here she is.
Hi.
MB.
Hello. How are you?
Oh, I'm so good. I am drinking a ginger ale and bourbon with cherries in it, and you see how far I've gotten. So we'll see how this goes.
Indeed. So, MV was actually in the original production of Broads. And I don't know if you want to talk about like spending time with these women in that way and kind of studying them or learning them or.
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. So I grew up in the Midwest, which is very conservative. And I was actually shocked during a lot of the rehearsals for Broads because I couldn't believe that people were getting away with this stuff in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. They were really pushing the envelope, and all of them suffered consequences. So they were arrested, they were fired from jobs, they were banned from casinos, all this sort of stuff. But they kept going, and they were trying to tell their truths. And I just feel like, especially these days, when we are finally getting around to slowly and painfully acknowledging communities within our larger community that have been voiceless, that have been suppressed by the larger community. I feel like these women paved the way.
Yeah, totally. So we're going to talk about Saucy Silvia, who was an oddball in this group of women. I mean, she was, again, part of the vinyl revolution. She was Canadian. And
Canadian is now code for weird. I think we've established that, like, well, she's Canadian.
She's Canadian. She was unapologetically Canadian, though.
Yes.
So that was.
Yeah.
And her acts were, I will say this. So she was known as Saucy Silvia, and she had a fan base that had these buttons that said, "I walk for sauce." And that was her fan club, whatever.
And apparently the fan club thought this was hilarious, but nobody else got it.
Yeah.
Everybody looked at the buttons and was like, what?
Yeah. Everyone's like, they're Canadian.
Yes, exactly.
Canadian.
So we're going to turn it over to MB here, but Saucy Silvia would do a lot of little one-liners that were kind of like teasingly naughty during her act. And I'm going to let MB kind of show you what some of those are, but then introduce you to a longer form thing that Saucy Silvia would do. So I'm going to, Ben, if you want to give the stage to MB, well, she can take it away.
So what do you give a girl who has everything? Penicillin. This is National Sex Week, and all the girls who gave at the office do not have to give at home. I have a new album called How Can I Love You If You Won't Lay Down? And on the other side is Let Me Call You Sweetheart because I've called you everything else. But Saucy Silvia was best known for spoonerism stories, and here is perhaps her most famous. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's spoonerism time. Now, of course, you know with spoonerisms, instead of saying ladies and gentlemen, you say jadies and lentilmen. Instead of saying George Washington, you say Warge Joshington. Instead of saying Friar Tuck, you say Trier, well, you get the idea. So tonight, I'm going to tell you the story of Rinder Sella, who lived in a big hark douse with her mean old Mepstother and her two sisty uglers. And they made Rinder Sella do all the wordy dirk while they just sat around cheating auklets and maggin Ridazines. So one day, Rinder Sella was flopping the moor, and the two sisty uglers came in and they said, guess what? The Pransome Hints is blowing a big dancy fance and we're invited. It's too bad you can't go. So Rinder Sella went back into the kitchen with ears in her ties, and she was just about to chickasee a frickin' when suddenly there was a blinding flash of flight, and standing before her was a feudable berry. And Rinder Sella said, who are you and what do you want? And the feudable berry said, I'm your berry Modguther. And Rinder Sella said, can I go to the ball? And the berry said, well, that's a big wish, but you can go. So she waved her magic wand, and instantly Rinder Sella was transformed into a bavishing ruby. She wore a long white Gatton sown and a necklace of rurals and poopies, and on her feet were two tiny sass glippers. And the berry said, now you can go, but you must promise to be home by midnight. So when she cast to the camel, that's came to the castle, the first pooteeple she ran into were the two sisty uglers. But she was so beautiful, they didn't cinderize Reckonella. So they introduced her to the Pransome Hints, and he said, may I dab this Hance? You are so beautiful, you remind me of beeping Slooty. And he was just about to ask for her mare in handage when suddenly the strot clarted to trike 12 and Rinder Sella banned from the rawl. But as she did so, one of the sass glippers flipped from her soot. And the Pransome Hints picked it up and he said, well, all I have to do is find the woman whose soot this flipper sits and I'll know the merle I want to garry. So he went from house to house, and you can't turn that around. Pretty soon, he came to the house where Rindersella lived, and he docked on the Noor. And who should come to the Noor but the two sisty ugglers? And the pransome hints held up the sass glipper and said, I want to see if this foo shits. But of course, their beat were too fig. But then it was Rindersella's turn, and guess what? The glipper pitted perfectly. They were married and happed lively ever after. Yank foo.
So good.
So good.
So good.
At the end of all the rehearsals, we would talk about how weird Saucy Silvia was, and MB would do the following gesture. You know what it is.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
I think they had some good vegetation in Canada.
Well, we want to close this week with some dirty joke telling, which was also a part of the vinyl revolution. And so I'm going to invite Brett back on screen here. And here she is. And I will. I'll move to the center. I'll move to the center. Thank you, Scott, for seating the stage. As I said, as a part of the vinyl revolution, as a part of the thing that was going on during the 60s, there were all these what they called party albums that would happen, that people would, break out at the party because they had naughty jokes on them. And there were a whole raft of ladies, the most famous being Belle Barth, Pearl Williams, Rusty Warren, Patsy Abbott. I always say, ladies who drew their eyebrows on, who wore sparkles, these big Yiddish mamas, postmenopausal broads who would, and on one side of their albums, like Belle Barth's album, If I Embarrass You, Tell Your Friends, on one side of the album, it says it's the 12 o'clock show. And then on the other side of the album, it's the 3 a.m. show. So it's like what was blue on one side got even bluer on the second side. But mostly what they did is they just told really good old dirty jokes. And so the three of us are just going to tell some of those jokes to close us out today. So if you're easily offended, tell your friends. Yeah. All right.
So my next story, it's a little risque. Madam answers the door to the whorehouse, and there on the front steps is a guy with no arms and no legs. And she says, what the hell are you going to do here? And he says, I rang the bell, didn't I?
Did you hear about the broad who walked into a hardware store to buy a hinge? The salesman says, ma'am, would you like a screw for this hinge? And she says, no, but I'll blow you for that toaster up there.
There's a woman ironing a brassiere, and her husband comes in and says, what the hell are you ironing that for? You don't have anything to put in it. She says, I iron your shorts, don't I?
Did you hear about the woman with spots on her thighs? Yes, green spots on her thighs. She is worried sick. She goes to the doctor. She says, Doc, I've got green spots on my thighs. I'm sick to death. The doctor examines her from head to toe, and he says, ma'am, I can find nothing wrong with you. Are you married? And she says, no, but my boyfriend's a pirate. He says, oh, well, his earrings aren't real gold.
It's a thinker. It's a thinker. Yeah.
Did you hear about the absent-minded mounted policeman? He jumped off his whistle and blew his horse.
You hear about the 80-year-old man who marries a broad 20 years old, and a week later he dies? It took him, the undertaker, 2 days to get the smile off his face and a week to close the coffin.
There's this little old Jewish lady sitting on a bench in Central Park, and a flasher comes up to her and opens his raincoat. She looks him up and down and then says, you call that a lining?
You want to know the difference between a French wife, an Italian wife, and a Jewish wife? A French wife has an affair. She says, ooh la la. An Italian wife has an affair. She says, mamma mia. A Jewish wife has an affair. She says, Jake, the ceiling needs painting.
There's a couple married for 15 years, wedded boredom. You know what I mean? But bored or not, you got to make hay. So it comes time to make hay, and they're in bed, and nothing happens. An hour goes by, nothing. So finally she looks at him and says, what's the matter? You can't think of anybody either?
Ah.
Yay! And on that note, I want to bring my husband, Scott Greer.
What did I miss?
I want to say thank you so much to Brett Robinson and MB Scallen for being our very first guests on Who We Put on Pants for this. Thank you.
Awesome. What a pleasure.
So, and Scott and I are just going to close things out with a couple of quick announcements. First of all, as we do each week, actually Lily is our in-studio producer. Yes, Lily.
Are you traumatized by all of the jokes?
Yes, this is a separate issue. Patricia wants to know why they call dirty jokes blue.
Oh.
We dealt with this actually
We
in
covered it in
our
the
section on vaudeville, but I'm happy to share again. In vaudevillian days, and I'll make this short, in vaudevillian days, it started in Boston, and the Catholic Archdiocese was in charge of it. So acts would come in, and Sunday school teachers would sit in the back of the house and watch the acts perform in a dress rehearsal, and they would write down all the things that were objectionable, and they would give them the cuts to their script in little blue envelopes. And that is why it's called working blue. So after you did your act, you'd go, and if you had a blue envelope, you knew there was stuff you needed to cut.
like all of the jokes you just heard.
Yes, exactly. So as we do each week, after this, we share an archival video from a show that we've done in the past. And this week, we are sharing Kathy Simpson's story, the astonishing actress Kathy Simpson, from It's My Party, the Women in Comedy Project, which combined original narrative with also true stories that from the women's own lives. And the first time that we all heard this story in the rehearsal room, our jaws dropped to the floor.
You should always click on the link after the show, but if you only do it once, do it tonight. This story is unbelievable.
Yes,
it's amazing.
It is. Next week, we're going to be talking about our show Double Down and the history of the double act. Our studio producer for this has been Ben Levan. Our in-house studio producer has been Lily Greer. Our sponsor has been always the cutest baby pug ever, Vito Childs, who says on behalf of dogs everywhere, we're so glad you're home. And be kind to yourselves, be kind to each other, and we will see you next week. Cheers.
Cheers.
I was in Lorton, Virginia, working at Lorton Penitentiary with a group of inmates known as the Lorton Voices. And there, I met Eddie Harris. Eddie Harris was an inmate. Eddie Harris had 2 life sentences for murder. And I fell in love with Eddie Harris. And it's interesting too, because there were a lot of good-looking black men at Lorton, but Eddie was my choice. After several visits with Eddie in the visitation room, it became quite apparent that I wanted to have sex with this boy. Erotic visitations, Eddie invited me to a function. What they call a function, but it was actually just a party. He told me the day it was going to be. I showed up in my cute little party outfit. A guard escorted me to the cafeteria. The inmates had decorated the cafeteria with streamers. There was a huge stage with a band on it and long tables covered with white tablecloths. Eddie walked to the door and escorted me to a table. And I was so happy because I knew I was going to get me some dick. And we start to Well, we're on the dance floor. And I'm holding on to this gorgeous hunk. He's rubbing up against me. And I'm rubbing